name is Raul Portales. I'm a senior Android engineer. It's my third year speaking here at Mobilization. I'm also an Android GDE. Past year I was talking here about code quality, tests, code reviews, and all that stuff. So this is kind of a continuation on what do you do after you have all that sorted, and the next step will be like visual tests. So today, I'm going to talk first about what visual tests are and why are they interesting. Then I will talk about what Vizzy is and how it works. And very briefly, I'll give you some plans for the future that we have for it. Okay? So, you're all familiar with this testing pyramid. We've talked about it. Everybody knows it. And I hate it. It is a horrible name. And you know why? Every time I hear pyramid, I think of this. This is what comes to my mind. This fantastic, majestic building that an architect has envisioned, and then he's put a lot of his developers to work on it, and they are not having any joy or anything, and maybe you even have like a product owner here wiping them, come on, finish this pyramid, and that's why I really don't like the concept of a testing pyramid. We should be doing tests, we should be proud of it, we should do something we enjoy. So that's why I present you with a complete new concept, the testing cupcake. Bear with me, because it makes a lot of sense. This part here, the bottom of the cupcake, is very dense. It's where most of the stuff is. And when you chew it, you really chew it. That's your unit test and your instrumentation, your integration tests. Because I don't really care if a unit is this small or this big or how many things you have. Is where most of your tests are, and they are all condensed, and it's the interesting part where all the chewy part of your tests are. And then you have the icing on top, which are your integration tests, which are very nice looking and very flashy, but they don't have that much substance to them, although they make all the cupcake look very, very nice together. And you can have a lot of different cupcakes. You can have just unit test and integration test and not instrumentation. Or you can have a little bit of unit test and integration test and a lot of instrumentation, because if that's what your application is, it's fine. They're all cupcakes and you can visualize them very easily. You agree with me that this is better than a pyramid, right? So, where the visual tests come into play with the testing cupcake? And what are visual tests? When I'm talking about visual tests, we're talking about pixel perfect screenshot comparison. So your app looks how it should look, regardless of your changes. And there are many cases where this is interesting. So in Workday, we use metadata-driven UI. We receive a model from the server, and when we receive it, we create native views on runtime, and then we render them. So we don't really have a layout for a particular scenario that will happen unless you receive the data. So it's quite important that the UI keeps consistent, and we don't have a way to do it without actually running the code. But you may not need to do this something that complex. Maybe you just have custom views. You create your own view and you use it in different places. Every time you touch this view, you want to be sure that it's going to display as you want it everywhere you're using it. Not everybody has custom views, but let's not stop there. Maybe you're reusing layouts, because including a layout into another layout is a very common pattern that we use in Android a lot. And sometimes you don't remember where a layout is being included somewhere else. So when you change this particular one, you want to highlight where everybody else was using it and how all these new screens look like. Or maybe you just use styles, which you should all be using styles. So if you change a particular attribute in a style, you want to be sure that all the screens affected are surfacing and you know exactly what is being changed. Because quite often you use styles in places where you are not actually aware that you are using them. So not most of you will have metadata-driven UI. Some of you may have custom views. I would say a big amount of you will have a reused layout in one way or another, and almost all of you should have styles. So yeah, visual tests are great, and I think everybody at some point should use them. And this is how they look like in a testing cupcake. They are the sparkles that you put on top of the icing, all the sprinkles. And it makes the testing cupcake look even better. However, sometimes, as you know, instrumentation tests can be flaky, and if on top of that you're actually comparing a screenshot, it can be a little bit more flaky. And if you're not very careful when you define your test, you may be looking like this. Like, is the test flaky? Is the test broken? What is happening? We at Workday have over between 2,000 and 3,000 visual tests, and maybe one of them fails every 3 weeks being flaky, 3 builds being flaky. So it's quite good. It's a good performance, but we have to be very careful when we design them. Otherwise, you get a flaky test and you just click yes. Okay, fine, passes. Oh, good. And then you stop paying attention for them, and it's even worse than if you didn't have them in the first place, because if you have them, you're counting on them to save you, but if you're ignoring them, then it's even worse than not having them. So that's visual tests. What is Vizzy and how does this come into play? At Workday, having metadata-driven UI, we wanted to have visual tests. So we searched around for a service that allows us to do this screenshot comparison, and we couldn't find anything. And to be fair, I heard already in 3 other talks people asking about the screenshot testing, and I was like, you come to my talk. But I didn't say anything because it was not my time. So we couldn't find anything, so we built it. And that's Vizzy. And then when we had it, we thought maybe other people will be interested in it. So we open sourced it. And then we realized not that many people is using Vizzy. So we started talking about it, and that's what I'm doing today. How we install it? So Vizzy is a Ruby on Rails server that you can install. You just check it out from GitHub, install Rails, and after that you can just create your own Docker instance, and everything is fine. This is fairly simple if you're a Ruby on Rails developer. If you are not, just installing Ruby on Rails may take you between 1 and 2 hours. But you only have to do it once. So it's not that bad. And we designed Vizzy with a plugin architecture in mind. So it's well integrated with GitHub, with Bamboo, with Jenkins, with Jira, and with Slack, because it's the technologies we use. We use both Jenkins and Bamboo. But it doesn't stop there. If you use a different system and you want to write some integration from Vizzy, it is designed to be plugin friendly. And it's fully open source, so you can just fork it and do whatever modification you need. So what do we need for this? So first thing, a CI/CD pipeline that that runs the test on the PRs. And that's not extremely required because you can run them locally as well, but it's where Vizzy works best. Whenever you have a new pull request, you run all your tests, you run your visual test as well, and you add that information into the PR, and then you don't have to do anything on the developer machine. That's when Vizzy works best. It's not necessary, but it's recommended. And a little bit more complicated, you need to have a testing framework that takes screenshots. Once you have the screenshots, you can upload them to Vizzy by just running a Ruby script, and everything is fine. And that script will be run on your CI/CD pipeline. So you have to configure it once, and then it just works. I think we haven't touched our implementation in our CI/CD pipeline in about a year. So once you have all these, things work. And it's very well designed to work with Git flow. So you have your develop branch, and you have what we call the base images. These are all the screenshots that correspond to what is currently on develop. Then you run your feature branch and your pull request. Here on your pull request, you will create new images. And these images will be compared with the base images. And then it will either be a good new image or a bad image. And this is up to you to decide. If you decide to accept a new image, it gets replaced, and you get an updated base images. Or you can run all your tests on develop again, and all the base images will be updated automatically. Sometimes some other PR will have been merged in between, and some of your new images will be different than what you have in develop because someone else has merged. So you can either merge develop back into your feature branch, or you can just ignore this image because you know it's not related to the changes you've been doing. So that's the integration with Git flow. And how does it relate to the testing cupcake? I mentioned it is the icing on top of the frosting, right? It's all the sprinkles. And you notice that the sprinkles are mixed with the icing. That's not just by chance, it's intentional. You are running your instrumentation test, you are going through the flow of your application, and that code you should already have written. The only thing you have to do is, at this particular point of the flow, take a screenshot. At this particular point of the flow, take a screenshot. And you run the same instrumentation test you have already, except that you are now saying, I want a screenshot here, I want a screenshot here, I want a screenshot here, I want a screenshot here. And those will be your busy test. So if you already have a consistent instrumentation framework working, it should be very easy for you. And they are mixed with all your instrumentation. So that's how they relate to all the infrastructure you have. And then on the server, you get something like this. You get your old image and your new image, and the difference. In this particular case, the difference is that now it says holiday, and before it didn't say anything. And even if you've been working on this feature and you know how it looked before, this is the sort of change that a human is very, very easy to pass by without seeing it. And that's why a pixel-perfect comparison is a very useful tool. A designer will not remember how every single screen of an app look like and what are the differences from the new ones. But with something like this, you can see what was, what is, and what has changed. And if you like it, you approve the new image. And if it is something that has been changed by something else, you can just ignore it. Okay. And because it works on screenshots, it's 100% platform agnostic. We use it for Android and we use it for iOS, but it could be used by whatever other mobile framework, platform, I don't know, Windows Mobile maybe. We always make this joke on mobilization. So it works for both Android and iOS because Vizzy itself only cares about screenshots. And yeah, you're all fine. This is a lot of talk, very nice. Show me the code, right? Well, here we go. You add a dependency for your Android test, which will be the Vizzy library. This is client side. And it's not on gCenter yet. I hope to upload it very soon, but you can get it as a project, or you can get an AIR, and you can just install it. And then you have to do one important change, which is, this is your default Android test runner. You change it with this one. And that will take care of creating the directories from the screenshots, taking care of the screenshots, and when all the instrumentation tests are finished, compare these screenshots with whatever is in the server. For that, you need to have a user email and token on the Vizzy server, and you also need to have the base URL, because the server has to be somewhere, and a project ID. And optionally, if you're integrating this with your CI/CD pipeline, you have the possibility to have the pull request ID, so it's all linked together, and by pull request you can always figure out what were the tests for this one. And that's it for configuration. How do you do this in your instrumentation code? Like this. I told you. You have your instrumentation flow, and you say, add a screenshot here. That's it. It's an extension function of activity rule. You say, add Vizzy test, and this will take a screenshot, store it, and later on will be uploaded to the server. I know you don't believe me, so I will prove it to you. So here we have Android Studio, And here we have a default Hello World app. So we have changed the instrumentation runner, and we have the email and the token are set from properties, from local properties, because you should never commit these things in your repo. Then you have a base URL. In this case, it's my local machine from the emulator. And then we have a project ID. So if we go here into Vizzy, I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to call it Mobilization. Mobilization 9. And as you see here, you have all the information for the Bamboo plugin, the Jenkins plugin, the Jira plugin, and all that. I'm just going to skip them for now. And here we have a project. We can see that the project ID is true. It's there, and there's nothing in here. So now we come and we say project ID is true. And for pull request ID, because it's a new project, we are going to pass -1, and that will mean it is a developed build. This will create all the new base images. Okay? We sync, and here on the main activity test, we have a sample visual test that checks that there is a view with ID hello, and then the text is hello world, and we are also taking a screenshot. So we just run this. And now the test is finished. It has uploaded all the information, and if we come here and refresh, we have a build, and inside the build, we have one base image, which is our Hello World application. Nothing too flashy so far. And if we come back here, we see our layout. We can check that it's exactly what we would expect. But maybe I'm an old school developer and say like, I don't really like constraint layout. I'm just going to put a frame layout in here. And you know what? I'm going to align this like gravity center, maybe. And then I can check it in here. It's like, looks the same. So now that I've changed my UI, I want to know if this is going to be different. Just for the sake of doing it in a developer machine, I'm going to change this to pull request 1 and run the test again. There it goes. And the test is completed. We actually have a URL down there, but just go. We see a pull request, and it has failed. Oh, wow. So it turns out the alignment of the Hello World from the frame layout and the constraint layout are not exactly the same. You can hardly see it, but they are different. I like the frame layout, so I'm going to approve this image. And now it's the new base image. But maybe we can do something else. Maybe we can go here and we can go in the layout and say, I want it big. So let's do text size. I don't know, something crazy. 30 SP maybe? Yeah, that sounds about right. This test is a lot more readable now. So now we go again, and here's where things get very interesting. Our instrumentation test has passed, because all it's asking for is that there is a view and it says hello world, and there is a view and it says hello world. But if we go back here to our project, we can see that although it says hello world, the screen is radically different. And all your instrumentation tests will never have caught this difference. And that's where screenshot testing becomes very, very useful. Okay, well, I'm going to stop here for the live demo. But I hope I've convinced you that it actually works. So that's Vizzy, and that's how you integrate Vizzy with Android using our custom library. You don't have to use this library. You can just make screenshots using whatever other framework that you want and upload them using the Ruby script that comes with the Vizzy server. And if that's easier for you because you're already taking screenshots, go for it. If you want some other simplified version, this Android library is quite nice. Plans for the future. The installation of Vizzy and the usage is a little bit complicated, right? So we want to make things easier. We want you to go ahead and just have a streamline. What are the two key parts that we want to improve is to simplify installation and setup, and libraries and IDE integration. For the first part, I told you you have to download the code from the repository, install Ruby on Rails, and run it. There are a couple of requirements about security from Ruby on Rails that require you to do that. But what I want is that you can install Ruby Vizzy the same way you would install SonarQube, Wikipedia, I don't know, pretty much any service that you get nowadays. You either get a Docker image and you point to it and you configure it, or you get a package and you install it. And that's the end. I don't want people to have to install Ruby on Rails to be able to run this. I got some people, or I know some people that's working on this part, not myself directly, but that's the goal. And then Android works really well nowadays with this new library because the initial investment on getting a screenshot test is quite high. You have to figure out how to make screenshots, you have to install everything, and this one allows you to just change a runner and get Vizzy out of the box. So we want to have the same for iOS, and we want to have the same for Flutter. The Flutter one is in the works. I expect to have it ready in maybe a couple of months, but it's one of my innovation projects, which I put like 10% of my time towards it. So I estimate a month, realistically, probably 2 months. But the Flutter one is coming. iOS, I'm trying to convince my coworkers that work on iOS that it's a really good idea to have an iOS library. I'm working on it. So I think that's everything. So I hope I have convinced you that visual tests are interesting, and this is a very nice tool that we build and can be of use of any of you. And if everything goes nice, I hope you have a very nice testing cupcake that looks like this. That's it.